Mystery schools were great mystic institutions revealed to a select few throughout civilization. For connecting humans to their higher consciousness, the ancient Egyptian mystery schools were idolized by the Greeks, and the Greek mysteries were worshipped by the Romans. You're invited to bring those mysteries into the modern day. Welcome to Mystery School.
Retrograde. But what does that even mean? Astrology is ancient, mathematical, symbolic, psychological, and depending on who you ask, either a profound cosmic language or pure BS. But what if astrology is not a prediction, but a framework for understanding cycles and a way to contextualize the moment we're living in? Today, we're joined by someone who embodies this practice beautifully. Rachel Lang is an astrologer, author, spiritual teacher, and elected public servant in Ojai, California. She moves fluidly between the mystical and the municipal, bringing both soul-centered insight and grounded leadership into her work. So let's meet Rachel and learn about astrology. Rachel, welcome to Mystery School.
Thank you so much, Jazz. It's so great to be here, to be with you.
I'm so excited to be together. I didn't mention it in the intro, but we're like spiritual twins. We're
I know.
star twins.
We are almost.
Yes.
We have the same sun and rising,
I love
and
it.
opposite moons, which means we're born like 2 weeks apart.
Yeah.
Amazing. I knew I loved you when I first met you, and it's just astrology confirmed it.
Same. I will always lean back on the astrology. Like, can we do it? We need the date. What does the astrologer say?
That's good, as you should. As many successful people do, and they don't even tell you that they're doing it.
Yeah. Yes. The idea of the Grand Vizier, even mystery school, which was something that people were always leaning into to learn a lot more about how the stars are affecting their fates.
Mm-hmm.
I know nothing though. You know everything. You're the expert here. So for listeners who only know astrology through like an Instagram meme, can you tell us what astrology is at its core?
Yes, absolutely. I would love to. So astrology is looking at the patterns of planetary cycles. And how they relate to things that are happening on the Earth. So it's kind of like when a weather forecaster looks at the cold front moving in and the warm front moving in, or when an economist looks at historic data points and comes up with a forecast for what could be happening in certain markets. Astrology is one more set of data points. Instead of using temperatures, we use planets. And because this has been studied for thousands and thousands of years, going back to ancient Babylon and Mesopotamia and Persia, because we've been collecting data points for thousands and thousands of years, we have a pretty good sense of how astrological cycles are going to play out. And so we can come up with our own version of that weather map or that economic cycle. And we actually do use astrology for things as terrestrial as weather forecasting and as technical as market trends and geopolitical events, and as personal as what's happening in your love life and when are you going to meet your person.
So you mentioned Babylon. Like, where did the astrology originate from? And then who pulled that down to use it as a tool? I got a lot of questions here. And why aren't we using it more regularly in traditional speak? Like, we have a meteorologist. Why don't we have the local evening news astrologist?
Yeah, I've been asking myself that question for years.
Like you, the local news astrologist.
I love that because I think it would help. Sometimes the news doesn't make any sense to anyone other than an astrologer. And we can say, oh, yes, this is why this is happening. It's because we are in a Neptune-Saturn conjunction, which I'm sure we're going to talk about today. So let me go back to where did astrology originate? And, for as long as we can determine from recorded history, we've been watching the stars. Humans have had this relationship with the celestial realms, with the firmament. And, I lived in Joshua Tree for a year. When you go outside and you see the sky, you can see Joshua Tree is one of the dark cities. So you can see the stars, and watching the Orion's belt as it moves across the sky really gave me a sense of what the ancients experienced. They didn't have YouTube or TikTok. They didn't have TV. And so the stories in the sky were what became defining narratives. And so it all started with just this imagination. And then how does that relate to us? And so they started to determine that the planets, which are heavenly bodies that move in rhythm, that each one of those told us a different story. So these stories, these myths started to come alive in the way that they practice agriculture, in their trade routes, and they used it more for those kinds of things rather than for our own personal, determining their own personal lives. It was really an understanding of how the astrology, how the planetary movement related to the things that they were experiencing here on Earth. And so, yeah, so this has been, it started to become developed more in the 3rd and 4th centuries, and we started to erect charts, and it preceded astronomy. So every early astronomer, Galileo, Kepler, Copernicus, they were all astrologers first. And so there was never a separation of this is science and this is pseudoscience.
Right.
It is, these planets are working in this way, and we're seeing the correlation here, as above, so below. So this is the foundation of what we practice today.
When I was in college, I took astronomy in the hopes that it was astrology, and it was not.
No, it's
So-
not.
Bummer. Like, they were intertwined, and then when did they entwine?
Yeah, so it started to happen really in the 17th century. It started a little bit before that. And, I think I'm hopeful that one day we're going to get back to them connecting again.
Yes.
Let's go back to, I'm going to take you back, Jess, into the 12th century. And in the 12th century, this was the scholastic period. I have a master's in theology, I'm a theologian. So I know this both from a theological perspective and also just from being an astrologer for almost 3 decades. And so back in the 12th century, schools started to fall underneath in Western civilization. Schools started to become more structured and fall within the Catholic Church. And they wanted their men, because it was men, who graduated from the schools to go out and find jobs and to get to work. And so that's where you started to see the development of cities, the development of the fields of medicine, the fields of science, all of those things. And so slowly from the 12th century all the way until the 17th century, you had the witch trials. You had a lot of the people who were pagan, meaning they were country people. You had a lot of them being pushed out. The institutions that were invested financially and otherwise invested in having these men be successful, and in being successful meant that this more land came under a jurisdiction, and that meant that they had more power and more tax money revenue. So they were invested in, they started to claim that things like midwifery and working with herbs and astrology, that all of these things that had been practiced for centuries, that preceded all of those technical fields, they started to categorize those under witchcraft.
Yes.
And then they started to really differentiate between what is science and what is superstition.
You're saying it's the men. I mean, it really feels like the patriarchy has truly mislabeled the normal practices of nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say too, though, I mean, at the time, there were priests who could practice divination, and the major religions had their own astrologers, and kings and queens, royalty had their own astrologers. And so there was this gatekeeping that was also happening. But a lot of astrologers, especially during the Reformation, were misusing their power. And so they were leading people, kings and queens, to doing things that had self-interest. And so Martin Luther actually came out against this practice. And so there was some corruption that was happening there too, that was a part of this. And so that was one factor. There was a lot that was happening all at one time, and it was the Enlightenment. And so, then we started to move more into a scientific framework. Rene Descartes, I think, therefore I am. And so we started to shut down from a lot of the practices that connect us with nature, that connect us with ourselves and our own intuition, that allow us to hear our inner voices. And, fortunately, there have been brave astrologers over the centuries who have kept these traditions alive and who keep reimagining them. Carl Jung was one in the in his time.
I love young.
No, I know. And, many of my mentors and people who were their mentors. So this information has been able to be passed on. And I love how it's had a renaissance just within in the last 10 years.
I'm going to take a slight
Yep. Go
detour
ahead. Yes.
from what you're saying, just in regards to you being a theologian. Do you know about Shintoism? Did you
Yes.
ever? So
Uh-huh.
would Shintoism be, which I don't know too much about it other than it's practiced in Japan and it's the major religion of Japan, and it's what is it? The respect and what do we say of nature? It's just nature is God, essentially.
Uh-huh.
So is that like a modern day form of what we're talking about?
Yeah, I think there have been religions. Like I said, most of my research is focused on the Western culture, Western
Yeah.
civilization. But, a lot of indigenous religions are not even religions because they're not formalized, but a lot of indigenous belief systems never really separated from that. And Hinduism, Buddhism, these all have threads that connect to their own astrological symbolism and language as well. And so I think that there are pockets of the world where we still do celebrate our interconnectedness.
Yes.
And our oneness with the creatures of the earth, with the cosmos. And so what we as Americans think of as like mainstream thought
Right.
is coming from Western culture.
Right.
But there are so many places that have never lost that awe, that wonder, that reverence that anyone who practices astrology feels. I'm a big environmentalist. I am an elected member of my city council. I'm very involved in policy, in doing anything I can do to protect our environment for future generations. And I think that desire to serve in those ways comes from my deep appreciation with the ways that we are all connected. And there's a lot of that's rooted in my understanding of astrology and my practice of astrology. It brings us into a deeper relationship with one another, with ourselves, with nature, with the divine, and that you can't help but take that into every other area of your life.
You mentioned that Joshua Tree was a dark city. I'm assuming just because it's dark and there's not a lot of city light, but it's the same for Ojai, where you are now, seems to be a real spiritual gathering place. In Ojai, are you using nature and ritual to work with astrology in your life? Like on the daily, are there rituals you do, monthly, weekly, moon, any of it?
Yeah, that's such a great
Using the
question.
city and you're using the geographic location as your compass?
Yeah, such a great question. So yes, let me clarify. A dark city is a city where there are specific ordinances that keep light pollution to a minimum. So you have to use certain kinds of yellow lights so that the stars can shine, so that the skies stay dark, which we're discovering is essential for pollinators, for certain types of birds and moths and flora and fauna. And so yes, Ojai is a dark city. We have a dark sky ordinance. Joshua Tree is. And I think this movement is spreading. Now, do I use ritual? Do I use astrology? I think I'm oriented because I do it every day. I'm oriented to it's like I always know where the planets are. I always know what's happening. And so it's a part of my everyday reality. Do I do rituals? Do I do work with it in intentional ways? Absolutely. Especially if, I lead a spiritual group.
Yes.
And so we do a lot of that together. And, I think the word ritual can be misunderstood. And one of the ways I define ritual is that it's anytime we create a sacred container for spirit, for some kind of realization, for an experience of deepening our own awareness to the divine. And so, sometimes I'm a busy person. I don't have a lot of time to put crystals out at the full moon or do things that, a lot of people like that I used to do when I had more spaciousness in my schedule. But, when I'm cooking dinner, I have a special wooden spoon that has little inlaid crystals in it. And I will think of the intentions and the love that I want to put into that food. And that's a ritual.
Oh, beautiful.
And, taking a shower. Every morning when I take a shower, I think about clearing my mind for the day. thinking about intentions I have for what I want to experience that day. What kind of mood do I want to be in? And so that's really how I work with ritual now. And then sometimes working in political ritual, not in,
Right.
I don't do that in my policy work or in my
Yeah.
political work.
Yes.
But if there's something that is troubling me, like the idea of drilling oil off the coasts of California, environmental catastrophe potentially, I will imagine that the coast of California is completely clear. And I will see it, I will visualize it, I will put light around it in my mind and hold the intention of what I think is going to be the highest outcome for all of the life along the coast. So that's one of the ways that I can use it. And we can all do this. In fact, many people who pray, and I told you I'm a theologian, so I grew up writing Catholic liturgies. I was on the planning committee of our masses in my high school. I played the guitar and piano for every Sunday from the time I was 10 until I was 18.
And I will raise you.
Yes, totally. I love it. So I know ritual inside and out.
Yes, yes. I was raised Roman Catholic and I loved the ritual. I loved church because of the deep connection of peace to God and how you're quiet and in reverence and have the words that even the words feel like humming, feel like vibrational frequency healing. And the candles, and I just loved the ritual of church, but I just couldn't get behind what the dogmatic, tenets of the religion were. So while I, yes, raised Catholic and have reverence for it, very early on as a teenager was like, I don't think it's for me. And really opened myself up to a spiritual life and journey and have such love for spirituality and how spirituality can live within religion. It doesn't have to be separate. Like they can be together. Even if we're non-denominational or if we're denominational, we can still practice where the stars live because that's what we're naturally. Someone says, hey, what's your sign? Like, what does that mean? Why is that important?
When someone asks what your sign is, they're asking where the sun is at the time of your birth. And so that's one aspect of a natal chart, of a chart. And it became really popular in the 60s when newspapers started coming out with horoscopes. And sun sign astrology became, the very trendy. And it actually was a way of selling newspapers to people who wanted to read their horoscopes every day. But astrology itself, to look at your birth chart, the birth chart maps out where all of the planets were at the time of your birth. And it places you in the very center of the solar system and of the cosmos. And each one of those planets represents a different aspect of your life and a different archetype that's alive in you. And when we look at a chart, we can see all of the themes that are present in your life. And we read those symbolically. And when we put those symbols together, often there are big aha moments for people about their childhood, about their career, about their love life or lack thereof. And so it's a way of helping us understand ourselves and our connection to the world we live in.
Now, you and I share a lot in our signs. For me personally, I am a Libra sun, Taurus rising, Sag moon. But what does that even mean? Like, why is it important? And are we more guided by the sun births? When I say, oh, I'm a Libra, that's not the whole picture. So how do you sort of differentiate the three? And what's the most important one?
Great question. So the big three, we call them, the sun, moon, and rising, make up the main personality traits that we have. So the sun represents, it's your spirit. It's how you shine your light in the world. And it's what you want to create with your life and your talents and your skills. And it often represents the way that we express ourselves creatively. The moon is the core of who we are. It is like the emotional body. And the moon is often, it's how we feel. It's the aspect of ourselves that is the most close to us, that is vulnerable, that relates to how we relate with one another in our families. And it also relates to the way that we feel our feelings. 0 to 80 in 2 seconds. Do we have a lot of fire as a Sagittarius moon would? Do we tend to think instead of feel as air sign moons do? Are we really wanting to create a life where we have balanced emotions and we stay on kind of an even keel? Or earth sign moons or water sign moons, do we feel everything in waves and try to manage our emotions? That's the moon. Then the rising sign is the sign on the eastern horizon at the time of our birth. And that is our interface with the world. So it's often how others see us. So both of us have a Taurus rising, which means others probably think you're stubborn. Others think I'm stubborn. But we appear to others like we have our stuff together. Like we appear very grounded and stable and balanced. And the rising sign's not always the part of us that we most relate to, but we become more and more like our rising sign over the course of our lives because we're pinging off of other people. And so we're always defining ourselves based on the interactions that we have, how we're received. And so that's the rising sign. The rising sign's like our outer personality. It's like the front door.
If I'm opening up the New York Times or whatever, I used to read the horoscope in, I guess my parents got, was it the New York Post? I'm embarrassed to say it. For people who are looking to read their daily horoscope, which sign do they need to look to read? Is it the one that they have been reading their whole lives, or is it all three?
Yes, great question. So I find, so a lot of horoscope writers write for the rising sign. And what it is, so we have solar houses, which means it puts your sun right in the first house and it orients everything else around it. So I would read for your sun and your rising sign. Your rising sign first.
That's wild. So my whole life I've been thinking I'm a Venusian Libra, but really I'm like a tough ass bull.
Well, a tough ass Venusian bull, because Taurus is ruled by Venus too.
Wow, so that's a lot of Venus.
A lot of Venus, which is great. And you can tell because you are, very personable. You are a people person and you're beautiful and you've got great style. And those are all Venusian qualities. And Venus loves to have a good time. It's actually I think it's Venus loves to have a good time, to eat delicious food, to enjoy socializing. And so Venus is a good influence to lead with.
Yeah, Venus definitely was Italian, for sure. So as we're talking about where the planets are, let's get into Mercury Retrograde.
Great.
What is it? What is Mercury Retrograde and why are people always freaking out when it happens?
Well, Mercury Retrograde, first, I think understanding Mercury Retrograde, it's an optical illusion, which means that it's, how when you're next to a car at a stop sign or stoplight and you start both going fast, but that car looks like they're going backwards.
Yes.
That's what's happening with Mercury retrograde. It's two planets moving in the same direction at approximate speed in close proximity. At the same approximate speed in close proximity. And it's a 3-week period of time that happens 3 to 4 times a year. And when Mercury is retrograde, it's closer to the Earth than it is in other times in its orbital path. And that's an important distinction because when a planet is close to us, then we have a brighter light in the sky. We see it more. We can't ignore it. And so Mercury retrograde is one of those times when we can't ignore Mercury. And what does Mercury relate to? Well, it relates to how we communicate. It relates to the things that we are holding back and don't want to say, but also the things that we need to say. Mercury also relates to transportation. It relates to communication devices and technical things. So Mercury retrograde is one of those 3-week periods of times when we can have delays and like the spotlight is on all of those things. And sometimes if you're not communicating effectively, you're going to get alerted to that. If you've been holding something back and it's disrupting your partnership, then Mercury retrograde is going to be one of those times when you have to bring it up to the surface.
So we fear it, but it actually keeps us accountable.
It absolutely. And it's a great time for introspection, for journaling, for writing, for rethinking decisions you've made. And often I find that decisions that are made politically, even like if you watch the news and you see what's happening, often they're decisions that are being made during Mercury retrograde come back in some way.
It's funny to hear you say that it only happens like 3 to 4 times a year because it feels like it's happening forever all the time. But right now we're in Mercury retrograde. So do you recommend that people maybe not move forward, but yet stay still and look inside during these times of self-reflection?
It depends. If you're born with Mercury retrograde in your chart, then it's a great time for you to move forward. In fact, the world is going at your pace.
Are we born with Mercury retrograde?
No, we're not. I know, we're not. Actually, you are. I'm not. Yes, you are. So this is a great time to be recording podcasts.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love that it can, for some people, support different things. So can astrology essentially tell our future?
It's a complex answer.
Yeah.
I personally feel like our choices, our attitudes and mindset really determines a lot about where we go in our lives. What astrology does is it gives us a roadmap. So it shows us what we were born with. It shows us our strengths, our challenges, and how we work with that determines our future. Now we can see, like I said before, we have data points. We have historic reference points for planetary cycles. We know how certain cycles play out in our lives because they repeat themselves. The moon moves through every house in our chart every month. The sun every year, Venus every year, Mercury every year, Mars every 2 years. These planets work like clockwork. And so we can have a forecast, just like a weather forecaster says there's a cold front and this is what happens with a cold front. With astrology, we say, this is a Saturn cycle. These are things that happen in a Saturn cycle. Here's how that could unfold for you. But every planet has a range of symbolism, and every planet has a spectrum of possibilities that it's connected to. And when we know about those planetary cycles and what is coming up for us, then we can work with the energy to plan whether or not to expand our business, to plan when to start a podcast or write a book, to plan when to run for office. I work with a lot of politicians, actually.
That's so funny to know. Not funny. I'm glad to hear that they're working with you to support what their choices are. I actually have a question about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're recording this way in advance of when it will come out. Not way in advance, but enough in advance. And I had a date that I was wanting to launch this. If I say, hey, March 31st is my date, can we look at the stars and be like, yeah, that's a great date, and or no, choose another date?
Yes and no. So there is no perfect date. I've tried so hard to find perfect dates, and there's always something. But yes, I work with clients to plan wedding dates, to plan the launch of a business, the launch of a podcast, the launch of a book, to send even a pitch deck or a proposal. We can plan everything to the minute. That's how I do a lot of things in my life. But we're also living in a world where, weddings happen on Saturdays, and you have a window of time within which to launch your podcast, and you have confined by the limits of time. So we can be practical. But yes, when you choose a date for something that you're planning, what you're doing is you're calling in all of the energies that you want supporting your podcast. And so I find that it really helps. I've had things that I've planned without looking at or I've just, let me throw caution to the wind and let me just do this. And usually the event that's taking place is going to have the energies of the astrology, no matter if you plan it or not. And so why not plan it? Why not work with it? And that said, everything, the astrology of a moment, of a podcast, of a wedding, of a new relationship, it tells you a lot about what this is going to be. And so, yes, you can plan it, you can work with it, but if you don't, then you're still going to have the energy it's still going to encapsulate what that energy is.
So I'm hearing that, yes, we can plan it. Yes, I have a date and I can work back on that. But for those of us at home, how do we even access astrology? How do we read the stars?
Yeah. Well, first of all, don't use AI.
Uh-huh.
Well, AI does not get it right. The calculations I have not found a good platform for it.
You need to build the platform.
I've actually tried, and
Yes.
the calculation, they have not gotten the calculations, and you're going to get cookie cutter responses.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's helpful for understanding basics.
Yes.
But if you're trying to use this as your go-to advisor, no. And if someone wants to show me something that works, that is accurate, let me know, but I have not found it to date.
Leave that in the comments if you're listening.
Yes.
Love to quality check.
Yeah, exactly. It is good if you put something in like, what does a Gemini moon mean? It'll tell you, and it's good at that. But there are so many different ways to access your chart and access astrology that are developed by professional astrologers. A lot of AI platforms, some of them are, most of them aren't. So astro.com is a great reference. Astro.com, you can do any kind of chart. And you can do your astrocartography, which maps things out to show you what places in the world work best with your birthday, with your goals. So astro.com is a great reference. I like Time Passages app for the iPhone, for iOS or Android. I also like Astro Gold for iOS, and Luna Astrology is good.
Well, you got all the recs.
Yeah. I can't
None
actually.
of the ones that I use. So I'm like,
Oh, okay. Cafe Astrology is also a great reference.
is that the Astro Twins?
No, but I like the Astro Twins are great. I mean, these are all my colleagues. These are all people I know, and I know their astrology. The Astro Twins are awesome, and they're fun too, and they're great astrologers.
They've been doing it a long time. I've known them from back in the day in New York, literally like 25 years ago.
Yes.
So I love that. Those are great recommendations for people who just want to get started. But we don't read the paper anymore. I would imagine that any of those you can look and find your daily horoscope for people who are interested. I'm definitely going to check out this astro.com and ask it some questions.
Oh, astro.com is wonderful.
Astrology is as above, so below. It's a mirror to us. What do you believe the skies, the heavens are asking humanity to see right now? We are in a weird place, girl.
We are. And anyone can go to my 2026 forecast and see that on YouTube and see that we knew this was coming. So we have major planetary cycles beginning in 2026. The outer planets move really slowly compared to Mercury, Venus, and Mars. And when the outer planets move into a new sign, they're showing us new focal points for how we evolve as a global society. So when the outer planets change signs, they are establishing the major themes that generations are here to teach us. And if you look at the generations like the boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, there are outer planets that are in certain signs that relate to those generations and how we define those generations. So when an outer planet changes signs, we have big changes that happen for us. Between 2024 and 2026, so within the last year, almost like 18 months, we have Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn all moving into new signs. So we know this is a time of concentrated social upheaval. A new paradigm is forming, which means new laws, new regulations, a new way of actually new boundaries and borders of countries, economic ups and downs. And so this is all culminating right now. We had Saturn and Neptune both moving into Aries. And so they start a whole new cycle. For Saturn, it's a new 30-year cycle. For Neptune, it's a new 165-year cycle. So the last time Saturn was where it is now was at the start of the Civil War.
Wow.
Yep.
Yikes.
Yes. Saturn and Neptune have a 36-year cycle of interacting with one another. And the last time they met up before now was in 1989 at the fall of the Berlin Wall. Yeah.
Do you have a little prediction here?
Yes. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think we're getting ready for a technological revolution. I mean, we already in one with AI. That's going to speed up when Uranus enters Gemini in April, and we're going to see it in transportation and the way that we use air taxis and drones and high-speed rails. Like, we're going to be able to access places that were more difficult before and access information in ways that is, it's almost like we're going to need to still ourselves because things are going to be moving fast. No. There's no need to be anxious. It's actually a very exciting time. But I think, if I were to forecast one thing, I think we are going to see more of a global. I think the movement toward globalization is happening. And a lot of what we're seeing with wars over borders and boundaries and my country versus your country over the next 10 years, that whole conversation is going to change. And we saw in COVID how when something happens, when certain places in the world don't have access to healthcare, it affects everyone.
Yes.
That was a preview, not of a pandemic, but that was a preview of how we're going to start focusing more and more on how can we all work together. This is going to take some time.
I was going to say, we don't have a leader in place right now that has that belief system and or action plan.
No.
When can we start to expect that? I would imagine a new leader has to take place. When do we see that happening, and who do we see that is?
I can say that between now and the end of 2027,
Okay.
we're going to be in a different framework.
Down, baby. I'm like, I love being a citizen of the world.
Yeah. And when you look at the chart for the inauguration of this current administration, there are some indicators there that this is not an administration that is going to stay in power the entire time. And I hesitate to say, to be, I don't want to make this political. You're starting a podcast. I want this to be a place where everybody belongs.
Everyone does belong.
Everyone welcomes.
Everyone's welcome.
Right. But I'm just talking about, the astrology of things shows that things has a shelf life.
That is really interesting. I don't want to say with bated breath, but it feels that way intuitively. So I'm sure that's the stars sort of moving us all along in that direction, because I feel that, and I'm just little old me. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here, be it if this person is removed because of action or removed because of it's a really, really wild time. So I'll be sure to keep up with all of your social content, what you are saying about the issue.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So before we wrap up, I just want to make mention that we have the Telepathy Tapes film coming out. And you and I had a conversation that you are working with private clients teaching telepathy, or at least intuitive conversation and communications. Yes. So I want people to know that they can find you. Where are all of the places where people can engage with you?
Great. Well, my website, Rachel Lang Astrologer .com is the number one place. And I have courses, I have a membership, I have development circles. I also am leading some workshops in New York. I'll be at Lilydale Assembly in August, and I teach at the Shift Network, which is a great organization. I teach at the Omega Institute. Really, you can find me anywhere. I'm out doing a lot of different things.
I love this. And I hope that when the film comes out, maybe we can do a live hang and do some telepathy training.
That would be awesome. That would be so awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for your time. You are such a cool astrologer, amongst many other things. And I'm so happy to have you and have you teach us a little bit more about astrology and how we at home can do it.
Thanks so much, Jess. It's been a real pleasure to be here with you today.
Awesome. Bye. If this episode resonated with you, make sure to hit subscribe right below so you don't miss out on what's happening next. Drop a comment and tell me what landed. It's your engagement that helps this conversation reach the exact people that it's meant to find. If you're craving the deeper connection, bonus teachings, and intimate live gatherings, come join us inside the Secret Society. The link is below.